Good morning and welcome to Why Workplace Charging. My name is Simbiat Yusuf. I'm the Communications Associate here at Fourth, and I will be helping moderate this webinar. Today, we'll discuss the benefits of workplace charging considerations when providing workplace charging and the best practices for workplace charging. Attendees, please be sure to submit your questions through the attendee chat and we will get through to them at the end of the presentation. So as those questions come up, you can pop them into the attendee chat queue. And we will also be sending the slides and the presentation shortly after the webinar. And with that, I will go into our introduction of Fourth. Fourth is a nonprofit trade association advocating for electric, shared, and smart mobility. We work in 4 focus areas, including industry development, demonstration projects, advocacy, and consumer engagement. We advance electric, smart, and shared transportation. And if you want to find more information about Fourth and our events and our membership program, you can find all of those at our website at fourthmobility.org. Again, you can get 1 ticket for 2 great EV conferences. The 4th Roadmap Conference will be held in conjunction with EVS 33, the International Electric Vehicle Symposium in Portland from June 14 through the 17th, 2020. And if you do plan on attending that, please show your support for Fourth by using registration code EVS33 This will get you into Fourth's VIP reception on the Monday of the conference, as well as into some VIP benefits as well. And on June 14th, we will be holding the Electric Transportation Festival, our public day celebration. This is a free, family-friendly event. You will enjoy free access to the EVS 33 exhibition hall, ride and drive, live entertainment, and food trucks showing the best of Portland. And you can stay for the entire week because on June 18th, we'll have several workshops and conferences. The first of that will be the E-Mobility Equity Conference presented by Evy Noir and Fourth on June 18th. This conference will explore and facilitate real conversations about strategies and best practices for engaging diverse communities, often hit worst and first by air pollution. You can find more information about that on Fourth's events website, and we'll be sharing more information about that on the recap email as well. Our speakers today are Fourth's Program Manager Ann Ramzy, Eric Smith, Regional Sales Manager at SemaConnect, and Andrew Milian, Lead Electric Engineer of Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Business Line at Burns McDonnell. Ann is a program manager at Fourth. She supports Fourth's pilot program initiative, grant writing projects, and business development. She holds a BA in history from Lewis and Clark College. Eric is the SemaConnect Regional Sales Manager for the Pacific Northwest, Hawaii, and Western Canada. Since joining SemaConnect in 2012, Eric has provided thousands of smart EV charging stations to workplace, multifamily communities, and other Class A commercial properties. Previous to his time with SemaConnect, Eric also has experience in the IT industry as a business owner and a background in marketing and sales. Eric is a 3-time EV owner since 2012 and is passionate about educating drivers and property managers about electric vehicles. And last but not least, Andrew is the lead electrical engineer for the EV infrastructure business line at Burns McDonnell. He's responsible for the design, construction, administration of transportation electrification infrastructure projects across the United States, including New York, Chicago, and Los Angeles, and also supports the recent expansion of workplace charging at Burns McDonnell's world headquarters. He's a licensed professional engineer in California and Missouri. Today, we'll be speaking on why workplace charging, benefits of workplace charging, best practices for providing workplace charging, and lessons learned from a workplace charging provider. And before we start, attendees, reminder, please submit all of your questions through the attendee chat, and we will get through those at the end of the presentation. And with that, I will pass it on to our first speaker of the morning, Ann Ramzy from Fourth.
Thank you, Cindy. Hi, my name is Ann Ramzy, and I'm a program manager here at Forth. I'd like to talk to you today about some of the benefits of workplace charging, both for employers and employees. And I'd like to start my presentation with a personal story about what workplace charging means to me. I've been driving electric for about the past 6 years, and a few years ago, I moved to a town about 20 miles away from downtown Portland where I work. Now, I used to drive a Chevy Spark EV, pictured here, in the same ectoplasm green color. The Spark was Chevy's compact compliance car before they came out with the Bolt. And the Spark has an advertised range of 90 miles. Most of you who drive EVs know that ranges are reduced in colder weather. And with my Spark, I was lucky to get around 60 miles on a full battery charge in winter. Those of you from the Pacific Northwest know that defrosters and windshield wipers are pretty much mandatory here in the winter. So after dropping my kid at school, driving 20 miles to work, 20 miles home, then picking my kid up, I was lucky if I still had a range left in the double digits. It was a little dicey. When I began working at Forth a few years ago, I was able to start charging at work, and this greatly reduced my range anxiety, and it really changed the game for me. Not only was I comfortable, now that I could actually use the heat in my car and not worry about using up precious range, but I could confidently make unplanned trips or errands. Before we discuss the advantages to employers in having workplace charging, I'd like to point out a few more employee benefits that might not be obvious. We've begun recently to hear a case against workplace charging with the reasoning that because battery ranges have increased, in some cases up to 300 miles on a single charge, the workers don't need to be able to charge during the workday. And I'd like to take a moment to dispel that myth. Workplace charging can help drivers achieve more electric vehicle miles traveled. People often buy plug in electric hybrid vehicles to take advantage of the benefits of driving electric, cleaner air, lower fuel costs, but sometimes they make long trips and are unable to purchase a higher range, more expensive EV. By having a place to charge at work, a plug-in hybrid driver can extend the electric range of their vehicle without having to use the gas engine. A driver with a Toyota Prius Prime, which has a 25-mile electric range, could now solely drive electric for a 40-plus mile round-trip commute. Although the price of a new EV has almost reached parity with the price of a new internal combustion vehicle, it's not quite even. Less expensive used EVs with decreased battery range offer a chance for more employees to access clean transportation. That same Spark EV that I used to drive can now be found for about $6,000 to $8,000, along with several other models of compact EVs in that price range. Part of our work here at Forth is to help shift the narrative that workplace charging is only for companies that pay their employees six figures or have significant resources to pay for the infrastructure. With more knowledge about operating systems and incentives, we can help spread workplace charging to all kinds of employment and for workers of all income levels. Lastly, it's also important to consider employees who do not have access to charging at home. Many people in large cities like Portland live in apartments or multifamily dwellings without dedicated parking spots or garages to install chargers. Installing chargers in condominiums or places with HOAs has been problematic. Some HOAs are eager to offer the benefit of charging to the residents, but others see it as a potential liability. So now that we've talked a little bit about why workplace charging is great for employees, let's take a look at some of the advantages to employers in offering workplace charging. According to a Gallup poll from 2015, 52% of employees believe their employers should be doing more for the environment. Installing charging stations at a place of work gives employers a chance to be leaders and say, hey, we hear what you're saying. Working to protect the environment and promote cleaner transportation is a priority for us also, and we're taking action on this issue. Workplace charging can be seen as an added amenity by potential new hires, and it can also help businesses earn LEED building points. Eric and Andrew will be going more in depth into the initial pricing costs behind installing workplace charging. But I wanted to point out on the graph at the bottom here that once charging is installed, the cost of electricity to the employer is much less than other employee benefits, for example, health insurance. This next slide here is it's another visual representation of how to look at the value proposition of installing workplace charging. So I'd like to go through a few examples in the following slides that illustrate different ways that workplaces have gone about introducing workplace charging and promoting cleaner transportation and some of the results. In this first example, in 2017, Forth helped to place 2 Honda Fit EVs and install 2 Blink chargers at 2 locations of the Oregon Food Bank in Portland and Beaverton for staff use. The Oregon Food Bank surveyed the initial pool of drivers after 6 months to see how they felt the pilot was going. Out of the 16 respondents, nearly half were not familiar with electric vehicles prior to the pilot. However, after a few months of use, over 60% were very satisfied with the EVs. In the first 3 months alone, nearly 800 miles were driven in the EVs. By having these EVs available for staff use, the Oregon Food Bank created a workplace community where employees could feel comfortable talking to other employees about their experiences and opinions about EVs, and then try driving them as they felt ready to. Another added benefit of having EVs on site for staff use is that the food bank is now able to offer positions to candidates who do not own cars and employees who own cars but would like to bike or use other forms of transportation to get to work, knowing that they have a staff vehicle available if they need it during the day. In 2020, the Oregon Food Bank was awarded funds through the Portland General Electric Drive Change Fund for 2 electric SUVs, which will allow for further distribution of meals and increase nutritional education to the areas they serve. This next example I'd like to talk about are the findings from a remarkable study put out by Avista Corporation last year. I highly recommend reading it. The largest subsidiary of Avista Corporation is Avista Utilities, which serves eastern Washington, northern Idaho, and parts of southern and eastern Oregon. The Electric Vehicle Supply Equipment Pilot program ran from 2016 through 2019, and a total of 439 EVSE charging ports were installed in a variety of locations, including residential, fleet, multiple unit dwelling, 7 DC fast charging sites, and 123 ports in 50 workplace sites. In this study, Avista found that workplace charging, in particular, supported EV adoption, resulting in an over 200% increase in EV commuters at reported locations, and that workplace charging can make or break the EV purchase decision for many commuters. Here on this slide, you can see the growth by quarter in the number of EV users. I'd like to quote from the study here a very significant finding in that when surveyed, multiple employers commented that they saw the charging stations as a low-cost benefit for employees. Averaged among all the workplaces in the Avista network, electricity consumption per workplace charging session was 8.7 kilowatts. This equates to 96 cents per session in electricity billing to the employer. Each employee charged an average of 17 times per month at work, resulting in an electricity cost of under $17 per month per employee. This in turn provides a leveraged benefit for employees of over 3 times the transportation cost savings as well as a 79% reduction of CO2 emissions compared to driving a vehicle powered by gasoline. One last benefit here of workplace charging that I'd like to point out is the ability to provide grid benefits from reduced EV charging at home during the peak hours. The Avista study found that EV commuters with both workplace charging and residential charging availability charged less at home than those with only residential charging, causing reduced evening peak load. So wrapping up here, I wanted to bring up a few reasons why, even with all of the benefits I've talked about, employers are hesitant to install workplace charging. As we mentioned previously, installation and initial costs can be considerable, making charging available to those who need it most. Sometimes there's not enough spots available to charge, and if you have employees who need to charge to be able to make it home, then you will need to think about a system to meet that need. Making everyone happy. Conducting an employee opinion or needs survey prior to installation can help employers figure out possible demand and need for charging, and also the best, most equitable parking and installation configuration. And lastly, if the employer has multiple sites, you may want to think about network charging options, which Eric and Andrew will be discussing. With that, on this last slide, I'd like to leave you with a couple of helpful tips to consider when thinking about installing workplace charging. And please feel free to reach out to me with any questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anne. And as Anne mentioned, the Avista study, we'll be sharing a link to that study on our chat. And now I will pass it along, and we'll hear from Eric Smith at SemaConnect.
Hey, good morning. Thank you, Cynthia. Thank you, Anne. Great presentation, and thank you for having SemaConnect be part of the presentation today on workplace charging. So again, my name is Eric Smith. I cover the Pacific Northwest, Hawaii, and Western Canada as well. And we're going to talk a little bit about SemaConnect and our role in the workplace charging stations. So some of the contents I'm going to cover real quick is electric vehicles, EV charging basics, and of course EV charging for commercial properties. And so the goals are going to be to establish understanding the new mass market of electric vehicles, requirements of charging, understanding the program benefits and requirements for commercial properties, the big major considerations and where you locate and install charging stations, and just awareness of some of the incentive programs that we have currently available. Right now, there is just tons of grants and availability for helping with the cost of charging stations. SemaConnect is a leading provider of electric vehicle charging stations in North America for the commercial and residential property market. And we're a supporter. We do provide both. We manufacture the stations and we develop the software. We're one of the rare few companies that actually manufactures and both the hardware and the software. And so I'll talk a little bit further about that. So myself, yes, 8 years coming up in April for SemaConnect and driving electric vehicles with 3 different electric vehicles in that time. Probably going to have my 4th later this year. And I've been helping to provide thousands of charging stations in the Pacific Northwest, Hawaii, and Western Canada, as mentioned. And I've also helped, fortunately, get some folks to understand the benefits of going from a gas car to an electric vehicle. So this is going to be some snapshots of what some of our stations look like in some locations here. Let's see, my next slide is not coming up. There we go. There we go. Workplaces. Go. So even Teslas work with our charging stations, which has always been a question that comes up. Just a quick snapshot. There is a number of electric vehicles that are coming out this year, have already been here, and will be coming. The big news is that pretty much the average minimum is 220 miles of range for electric vehicles currently, and soon 300 and 400 miles will be coming out as well that are affordable, including trucks. I'm sure you've heard of Rivian, Tesla. If not, these are two. There's more coming forward. Everybody's going to be coming up with some trucks that makes them that are going to be electric. Just a quick snapshot. Probably have already seen this, but electric vehicles had just been on the increase in sales pretty much since this whole inception came out with electric vehicles back in the early 2010, 2011 timeframe. So why an electric vehicle? Why do people get them? It's cost savings on the fuel. The performance is outstanding. I love the acceleration, instant torque on with my electric vehicles. It's providing less pollution, reducing our dependence on oil, which has a lot of variety of benefits. That's a big discussion right there. And of course, the battery technology is just getting better. I'm a technology guy myself, so I love seeing what's coming out with new technology coming out. Now, electric vehicle charging station basics, we kind of covered this already a little bit, but essentially, you can charge in your home. Yes, there's a lot of people that do that. There's also a huge population. Think of this, the number of people that live in condos, apartments, or in houses that have street side parking only. That's a large audience. And that is people that will clearly say, hey, when I'm ready, I would like to get an electric vehicle, but I don't know where to charge. That would be in the workplace, which is a blue section there. And then on the road for road trips. Not necessarily our focus as much, although hotels have our charging stations as well, but definitely in the workplace is a great location for people to charge on a daily basis. Without really getting into the nitty gritty of this, the standardized plug is the J1772, which is what each of our SemaConnect stations comes equipped with. This works on every electric vehicle, with Tesla sort of providing the asterisk to the equation, in that the Tesla drivers need to use the adapter that comes with the vehicle to plug into the J1772, but it enables all electric vehicles to be able to plug in. Again, not to get into the details on this one too much, if you've heard of level 1, level 2 charging, and fast charging, level 1 is your wall plug. You get about 4.5, 5 miles for every hour of charge, depending on the vehicle. A lot of people can charge up at home, and that's great. If they leave their car there in one spot for 10 hours, they're going to get about 45 to 50 miles of charge while they're sleeping at night. So that's good. Level 2, about 25 miles on average per vehicle. Some of that's going to change with the trucks coming out. They might get a little less mileage, but there you go. And then fast charging, about 20 to 30 minutes will give about 70, 80, 90 miles, kind of depending on the vehicle. So not to get into that, but level 2 is where it's at in the workplace, primarily because for about the cost of one DC fast charger, you can get about 4 or 5 level 2 stations. And let's face it, when people come into work at 8 in the morning, you can have 5 vehicles all plug in, charge all day long, and then leave. And there you go. And then the next day you have somebody else come in, and the next day you have another group of charge stations and electric vehicles coming into the stations, and so forth. So DC fast charging in the workplace just means one car can charge at a time, and then they have to shuffle the cars out through the day. So level 2 has been predominantly the norm for commercial property. With SemaConnect, some of the benefits of charging stations and properties is just the operational value. I'm going to say this, it just, by having charging stations in a property, you are going to be able to acquire or attract, I should say, the kind of tenants that you would like to your facility. I'm consistently going on meetings where they're saying, hey, we need a station here because the tenant is requiring it. And if we don't have it, we need to do something about it, or they might move on. So it's a great marketing value as well to say, hey, our property has the newest green amenity for commercial properties. Come on in. So tremendous value for just putting charging stations just in and of itself. SemaConnect makes primarily 2 products, the 6 series and the 5 series. The 6 series is ideal for the workplace. What that means is you can put one station in and multiple users can use it. The 5 series is really more of, it's one station for one specific EV owner or for fleet, which we could talk about too. If you have questions, please contact me and we can discuss this. But for the most workplace, the 6 series is where it's at. You can set this up to say, hey, the public can have a price to use per hour, or they maybe can't even have access at all. You can choose that. You can say just the tenants in here have access to the station. Here's pricing for them. And you can do variable. This snapshot just kind of talks about the 6 series again. You can is listed on as opposed to on the left, the Series 5 just does one station and one EV owner. With our software and our charging station solutions, you get smartphone access, so you can actually see if stations are available in use or not. You can pay for your charging session. You can be notified when your car is done charging or stopped charging. The property gets electric metering to see just how many kilowatts and dollars are being involved in the charging process. Automatic payment system, just tons of information. It's all cloud-based. Also, our stations have a really sleek and compact form factor. It's easy to swap out if there's ever an issue. So our reliability is higher than most other charging stations because we can just say, hey, if there's a problem, we treat it like your smartphone. We can remotely diagnose what's going on with the station. We can ask you to reboot the station, or we just send a replacement to you. And the replacement usually shows up within 3 to 5 days. While unfortunately other competitors might have to send someone out to take a look at that, which could take more than a few days, a week, maybe 2 weeks at most. So we can get you back up and running quicker if there ever is an issue. Open charging station network just means that we are willing to connect and work with all charging station solutions across the board. We are what we call OCPP version 1.6. Which is great for the station network interoperability and partners that we work with. One big partner we have is PlugShare, in which you can actually find stations, pay for your stations, and also get notification of when the stations become available. This is kind of a view from the property management, the station owner viewpoint. You can go in here and see pricing plans. You can set policies to say who can use it, who can't use it. You can charge by time. Okay, so one thing, there's about 30 states that you can actually charge by kilowatt if you'd like. So there's just flexibility galore with our software. I've had station owners say it's about as easy as using Expedia for the first time. So instead of picking dates and methods of travel and cities and hotels, you're just picking stations, groups of stations, multiple properties. You can have one login and password to manage multiple properties, multiple stations, one specific station, whatever you'd like. Also with the dashboard, you can see transaction history, energy again, the consumption, the cost, all that's involved, revenue, utilization, daily usage analytics, and then sustainability information as well to just show you, hey, how much of an impact are you having on the carbon footprint in the reduction of carbon. The driver software, I've kind of covered this a little bit already, but we have an app, PlugShare. I love PlugShare because you can actually, it's a universal mapping tool that shows where all stations are at, but specifically you can actually pay for our stations on the app. Again, see if they're available, in use, offline. You can be notified when a station becomes available as well. It's just fantastic. So you can also pay through a website. You can dial an 800 number. If it's like your first time ever using a station, you're never stuck. And probably one of the biggest things that it drives EV owners nuts. They sometimes have multiple accounts with different charging stations. SemaConnect heard from EV owners, we understand you would never go to a gas pump and have to give away your name, your number, your credit card number, your email address, and your home address just to use a gas pump. Same thing with us. You do not have to sign up and create an account with us unless there's some special pricing that maybe the property wishes to offer to an employee. But EV owners prefer that and actually kind of go out. Well, they go out of their way to find the stations that don't require their data to be stored in a database somewhere and done with whatever. Who knows? So these are some of the big features there. Also, one of the unique features that we have is this at-a-glance lighting. This lighting is something that's unique to us in the sense that you can see from a distance as a property management, hey, is the person plugged in? Are they charging? Are they fully charged? Or are they just parked in front of the charging station? I mean, this is a huge issue, is that cars will a lot of times park in front of charging stations because they can, because they know the property management's too busy with other things in life. And a lot of times property management's like, yeah, I need something that can help me not only recognize which cars are charging and plugged in or not plugged in, but also I need something to help kind of work to get the person to not do that sort of behavior in the first place. So if you ever pull into this, like this issue, if you pull in, or this picture, if you pull in to where one of the stations is with a blue light, you're going to jump out and say, oh, what is this? Oh, this one's blue, the other one's a green. Maybe I shouldn't be here. And you park and go somewhere else. It's a huge benefit to say, let's cure the behavior. Let's change the behavior of that driver before they actually go through this process of parking here and trying to get away with it, right? So talk to me if you have more details or if you want more details about that. Simple requirements of our stations. Every station needs its own dedicated 2-pole 40 amp breaker. We've looked long and hard at the idea of doing something called power sharing. Some of you may know about that. What it really comes down to is this: there's the idea that you can share one line of power and split it between a couple of connectors. It sounds great to property management a lot of times. Architects love it, engineers, developers. The problem is that EV owners are like, hey, this now takes sometimes twice as long or 4 times as long, and there are days we need the full amount of energy. And if you show up to a property where there's power sharing, and you have no choice but to get a fourth or take 4 times as long to charge your vehicle as you would, you're going to be in a bind. So each one of our stations gets its own set of power, about 25 miles for every hour, and there you go. Also, you need to have put the stations in an area where there is adequate cellular data signal, Verizon 4G for an example. So if these go outside, you do not need to run any sort of additional communication cabling to it. If you put it inside of a garage, our best recommendations are, hey, try to put it closer towards the entrance, and or you may need to put a cellular data repeater in there, or there may be already signal in the garage. So we're happy to come out and talk about what that looks like. And there definitely are benefits to putting cellular data into the equation as opposed to trying to make this connect through Wi-Fi or Cat5. Good news is if you put a cell repeater in, everybody can benefit from a cell repeater, not just the stations, right? So we can talk further about that if you have questions. And I think just coming right down to the end of this here, ROI, we've seen that one station with $4 a day in profit, there's an ROI of about 3.5 years. If it's a modest installation, 4 stations, it says 2.4 years. I've seen people say with 4 stations, each station getting $4 a day in profit, it can sometimes be about 1.5 years. But moving down, I'm going to kind of scoot past this here real quick. There are the big one here, the federal tax credit of 30%. For charging station hardware and installation is good until the end of this year, and it's actually proactive to any properties who have installed stations back to 2016, the year 2016. You can get a 30% federal tax credit up to $30,000 per site. Again, give us a call on that, and of course there are usually local incentives as well. Just a quick snapshot of some of the properties we have around the U.S. And I think I'm just going to kind of move along. This is the newest, greatest amenity. It's arrived. Vehicles are coming, and really appreciate your time and listening to what we have to offer today. So please give us a call if you have any questions.
Thank you so much, Eric. And finally, today we'll hear from Andrew Milian, who will highlight Burns McDonnell's experience as a workplace charging provider.
Thank you so much, Simbi, and also to Eric and Ann for speaking before me. So today I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about our experience, not only as an EV driver like Ann, and not only as a charging hardware provider like Eric, but also as one of the workplaces who has gone around and installed quite a few of these chargers for ourselves and for others. So Burns McDonnell is a full-service engineering and construction firm headquartered out of Kansas City, Missouri. We offer turnkey projects across a wide variety of scopes, including transmission and distribution, commercial, industrial, you name it, we've probably at least touched it once. Importantly, we're a very large company, or at least large as I see it, in the top 5% with 50 offices worldwide and 7,000 employee owners across those offices. But what we're going to talk about today is the headquarters charging project that we have here in Kansas City. Out of this office, we have about 2,700 employee owners that are daily employees. But not only do we have that EV charging here in the office, we offer EV charging services, design and construction across everything from smaller commercial installations for multi-unit dwellings or programs for the utilities, such as Southern California Edison's Charge Ready program, all the way up to some medium-duty and heavy-duty industrial equipment, such as Class 8 trucks and buses. So moving to the workplace charging program that we have here on our World Headquarters campus, we offer a total of 16 level 2 charging ports. Let's see if that picture will come up. Sorry, one second. Total of 16 level 2 charging ports, 14 of which are on different charging networks, 2 of which are non-networked dumb connectors. And we have a pretty diverse installation, at least so far as we've seen, where we have 3 different charger manufacturers represented on our campus, along with 2 different charging networks. On a day-to-day basis, I am currently aware of 30 regular EV drivers. I manage our dashboard and I manage our outreach programs, but we are adding more every day. So we are sitting at about a 2-to-1 ratio of EV drivers to chargers. But we didn't start here at 16 chargers all ready to go, hooked up to the network. We started a while ago, and we started with some simple chargers. So back in 2013, we had our initial rollout of some AeroVironment chargers that I think everyone who was around in that time driving and working with EVs was very familiar with. We started with a total of 4 plugs and 8 reserved spaces. So these were expected for a driver to go out during lunch and flip the plug over to the other car that was parked next to you. As part of the KCP&L, now Evergy Clean Charge Network, we gained another 4 plugs with 4 dedicated spaces. This was our first foray into having networked smart chargers. At the time of installation, the funding for these came through the Clean Charge Network grant program, so they were subsidized completely. Burns McDonnell did not have to pay for the electricity at the time. That grant has since rolled off, and now Burns McDonnell has continued to pay for the electricity usage for those chargers so that they remain free to employee owners during the workday and to nearby residents and EV drivers during the weekends. Moving from there, back in 2016, we built a new building next to our original 2, which required a new garage, which means more parking, which means more EVs. So we added 2 more plugs of the same AeroVironment brand and the same setup of 2 plugs for 4 spaces. We worked along like that for about 2 years, but in 2018, we added our first dedicated EV company car. So this is a fleet vehicle dedicated to running courier routes around Kansas City. We have a lot of times where we need to get drawing packages, contracts, etc. around the city quickly, and we figured that the most efficient way to do that was electric. So we added a dedicated charger for that vehicle, and we're now up to 11 plugs with 17 spaces. Later on in 2018, we also decided that we were going to get more chargers within the same hardware that we had already installed. So we opted to replace 2 of the AeroVironment chargers with 4 chargers from CMI that were going to be installed in a power sharing configuration. Like Eric said, this is a really convenient way to get more power in there when you're already limited to existing construction. While it's not the best option, and it certainly doesn't give you the most power, it does reduce the interruption to your workers by no longer requiring that they go out to switch a plug over lunch. We do still, the number of chargers that we have, the number of users that we have to the number of chargers in this area in particular is pretty dense, so they do still shuffle their cars at lunch, but that was one of the benefits, was to try and get more vehicles through with as little cost as possible. Through 2019 and 2020, we continued to replace the remaining 3 of the remaining AeroVironment chargers with 3 of these FSX wall-mounted chargers, which are also configured in power sharing. So at this point today, we are up to a total of 16 level 2 plugs with 17 reserved spaces. As I speak, they are finishing up construction on our newest addition to that building that we built back in 2016. And that means that we have more garage and more EVs, and so we will be expanding there and adding 2 more plugs into that garage shortly, and then additionally as we need it. So all that said, we've grown, we've replaced some things, we've made some changes, but why? So as I had mentioned originally, I am on the electric vehicle infrastructure team. So we are involved in rolling out and installing and analyzing electric vehicle infrastructure needs for all of our customers. So replacing those old chargers, those AeroVironment chargers, gave us a way to start to monitor the usage within our network. These are still being given away. The electricity is still given for free to employee owners and those who come in on weekends and outside of working hours. But this allows us to monitor the areas that are at highest utilization, better track the user behavior to kind of start to get a picture of what does a regular EV driver do, how do they behave, how do they charge, and then we can start to get all of that data together and analyze it to take those lessons back to our clients, so when they ask for information regarding where should they put chargers in, how many chargers should they put in, what kind of usage do they expect to see, how much do they expect to pay, we have real answers to give them. It was the changes that we've made have also been a way to continue to improve service for our users. So the change from 7.2 kilowatt charging that many of us are familiar with at a level 2 down to a reduced level 2 charge at about 3.6. It got a little bit of pushback initially, but I think a lot of the users have fully bought on that the idea that you should be able to just plug your car in and leave it there as long as you can and not have to worry about going and doing a car shuffle when possible, that's ideal for them. It's giving them a little bit more flexibility throughout their day to go out and move their car when they're able to. That said, we do still encourage good sharing behavior. Our rule is to use 4 hours of charging at a time. That said, it is more of a suggestion, honestly. If somebody needs to get a full day's charge, or if somebody has a lunch meeting that runs over, we are all engineers and all running around like chickens with our head cut off half the time. So sometimes we can't get a chance to get out there and move. Nobody's going to get you a ticket. Nobody's going to tow your car. Just it's a encouraging of good sharing, just like you would back in kindergarten. But with our changes to joining the Greenlots network and the ChargePoint network, we've also gotten the use of app-mediated tools such as smartphone notifications, and we're currently working with Greenlots to implement a queuing system where users will be able to get in line and reserve a charger after someone is able to move. And recently, we've made a major switch from Skype to Teams, as I think a number of Microsoft using offices have been undergoing. But that has given us an ability to create a community for our EV drivers and allow us to communicate with each other for when somebody needs a charge, when somebody is desperate, when somebody has kind of maybe forgotten to move their car, or if there's any difficulties with the chargers themselves. But we've also got some lo-fi tools. At one of the buildings, the group of EV drivers organized essentially an old school phone tree to text and call each other to notify each other when they would be moving their car, when they would expect to open up a port and things of that nature. We expect for those to slowly diminish, the need for that to slowly diminish as the services through ChargePoint and Greenlots become more and more robust. So like I said, we do want to take these lessons and be able to apply them to our clients and advise them correctly. So even today, our chargers are not at 100% utilization every day. We have one pocket of chargers which is used almost 100% of the time, but then across the remaining, I believe 12, we're at maybe 75% utilization. So what that means is that while we may need to add more chargers into the area of highest density of EVs, it advises us that we don't need to dump it into all of the locations that we have available. That was one of the benefits of getting some of this intelligent data, is that we can now see where the pockets of highest utilization are and grow those areas intelligently. As Eric had mentioned, cellular networks are the easiest way to connect an EV station to the internet. We opted to not do that because we hate ourselves and we wanted to learn as much as we could. So there is a lot of challenge to using an existing IT network, namely that your IT guys probably won't talk to you again, but there is a lot of rules depending on the specific manufacturer and specific model and what charging network you are trying to get that EV charger to live on, regarding which ports need to be open, which ports need to be forwarded, and how the firewall needs to be configured. Those are not always abundantly obvious in the installation manuals and can require quite a bit of troubleshooting, packet sniffing, etc. So I hope someday to get back in the good books of our IT network, and I thank them very much for struggling with me to learn exactly how hard it can be to put them onto a locked down wireless network. We also learned quite a bit about charger selection. We had very specific requirements about what we wanted our chargers to look like. We needed them to include power sharing of some kind. We needed them to be able to live on an existing IT network, and we needed them to be OCPP so that we could work them with any charging network that we chose to select. So that limited us to about 3 manufacturers, who then was limited to 2 when one was not able to provide a UL product within the timeline that we were requesting. So knowing that there are all of the differences for what each charger looks like and how they work and what the different features are, approaching that as a consumer always lends you a chance to learn a lot of lessons that you maybe would not as a specifying engineer. And last but not least, charger network operators can be a bit of a challenge to work with sometimes. So Greenlots, ChargePoint, SemaConnect, everybody who puts their charging hardware onto a network to aggregate that data in some way, to even if it's just to post whether a port is available or not available, they do have requirements for exactly how it gets out there onto the internet, how you configure it, and how the different firmware on the chargers is installed, configured, etc. So I will be honest, we are continuing to struggle with one of our chargers, and it, for whatever reason, refuses to maintain a good network connection and refuses to maintain connection to the charging network and report data correctly. So there are challenges when you take something that you feel like should be out of the box, smart and easy, and trying to make it so. So that's the long and short of what we've been doing here at our World Headquarters campus. And I'll now turn it back over to Cindy, I believe.
Yes, thank you so much, Andrew. And now we will begin the Q&A portion of the webinar. If you have any questions, please submit them on the attendee chat, and we will get to them as we are going through. My first question is for Eric at SemaConnect. We had a question on cybersecurity precautions that are taken with your charging stations. Are there any cybersecurity precautions you guys have right now?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, so all of our stations are PCI compliant. Also, because this is not on the network of like IT, as Andrew was mentioning there, this is all going off of cellular, Verizon cellular signal. So it is completely independent of any charging, or I'm sorry, of any IT network that might be in the building. So hopefully that makes sense. It's kind of clear and simple. Going cellular just keeps it off the network and reduces the vulnerabilities.
And my next question could be open up to all of our speakers because we all have different interactions with either utilizing workplace charging, providing workplace charging. What does it look like either providing free workplace charging as a benefit versus charging your employees or getting charged per month? How do we see that? What's the benefit of each? If you guys can speak on that.
I can speak first real quick here. So our stations can be set up so it can be free from now until the end of time if you want. Secondly, you could do something where it's like free for a couple of hours and then you start charging an hourly rate and then increase the rate as you go along to create turnover. And then lastly, you can charge by the a dollar amount of some sort right the moment when the person plugs in until they disconnect. If you are concerned about turnover and getting more people to use it, I will say in the workplace, a lot of times free charging can kind of allow people to take advantage of the situation, while there's other people that say, hey, I would be happy to pay to use the charging station, but I cannot because there are people there. That then also creates a little bit of a burden on property management to say, how do we get these people to move? I had one property say, it's like a hotel room. I'm going to charge you until you're out of the room. And if you're in the room, I'll continue to charge you. It's not meant to be mean or, anything else, make a profit. It's just more to create turnover because, quite honestly, adding more charging stations, adding more electronic infrastructure, it costs a lot of money. If the company is willing to spend that, fine. At the same time, a lot of times electric vehicle drivers are saying, I'm actually okay with paying, less for this fuel than I would have with gas. I'm fine with paying for it. But it's up to each property what they would like to do. And our stations have that flexibility.
Okay. And?
Yeah, that's a great set of points, Eric. I know within the culture of Burns and McDonnell, it was at least initially difficult to get buy-off on installing chargers that would continue to dispense free electricity. So having that mechanism to maybe not recoup all of the costs, maybe not to turn a profit on the chargers themselves, but at least to kind of soften the blow can be a major benefit. And like you said, many EV chargers would be perfectly willing to pay the rate as long as it's lower than the rate that they're paying at home.
Thank you, Eric and Andrew. My next question is specifically for Anne in regards to the study with the Oregon Food Bank. You had mentioned the satisfaction rate was 60%. Was there any big issues that prevented that from being higher than 60%?
Yeah, I think most of the reason why it wasn't higher than 60% had to do with the range of the fit EVs. I think the range is generally between 80 and 90 miles, and sometimes the staff needs to drive out to pretty rural locations. They service, all over the state. So I believe in the new vehicles that they're getting through the Drive Change program, that they're actually, some of them may be hybrids, giving them that flexibility to go a bit further when they need.
Thank you, Anne. And I think this would be directed towards Andrew, and if any of the other speakers would like to speak on this, you can. When it came to installation of the charging stations, we know that could be a big cost for the organization. Can we talk about some of the different processes, whether there are grants available that you are able to apply for, or what are we seeing in the market today that can help prohibit the cost of that initial setup fee, installation fee, and erase that barrier for employees to offer this service?
I can talk a little bit to that, but that might be more for Anne. Is that right?
Well, I was going to mention, I know here in Oregon, Pacific Power actually has a program where businesses can apply for a grant to have the installation costs, and I believe the cost of the hardware also reimbursed, if they do that. But there are also other utilities around here and other grants that can help to offset those costs.
Yeah,
And Eric, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead, Eric.
Yeah, Eric here from SemaConnect. So, kind of along with that, there's obviously the federal tax credit, 30% grants. One thing that SemaConnect does also offer, and I'm kind of answering Kenji's question here as well too. We offer 94% of whatever the station owner sets. That money comes back. So, if you want to charge $1 per hour for usage, that station owner will receive 94% back. 6% goes towards credit card transaction fees. Ultimately, that helps, even though I would say this, if you wish to get a grant and pursue grants or credits and all that, I say great. At the same time, there is an ROI that is achievable. It might be 2 years, it might be 3 years, it might be 4 years down the road. Eventually, it'll be achievable if you charge a rate. If you let the stations be free, there won't be an ROI for obvious reasons, right? But eventually, all of the grants are going to do is just kind of speed up the time you hit your ROI that will come to you eventually in the future if you charge a rate. So consider that.
And Andrew, do you have anything to add to that?
Honestly, I think the other two have covered it perfectly.
Okay. And I think we have time for one final question, and I'll open the floor to all of the speakers. What work still needs to be done in order to make workplace charging a common feature to become one of the major benefits that you're offered as an employee if electric vehicles are something you're interested in and you live in an apartment?
Eric here, I can speak on this one. I think there's always this challenge of, well, will people even want this, right? And I have to consistently remind EV owners, my fellow EV owners I've met over the years, to say, have you talked to property management about this? And a lot of times they're like, well, we don't know who to talk to. Sometimes it's the gatekeeper, it's somebody, but they don't get to the absolute decision maker on who to do this with. View it sort of like the tip of the iceberg type scenario. You always see the 1/6 of the time, but 5/6 of the time, there's a lot of other stuff going on below the surface. EV owners want charging stations. They just absolutely do. Now, it might be at their house. I get that. But for apartments, condos, and people street side parking, and even the people from home that could charge, they need this. And I also add this too. The demographic of an EV owner, at least now, and it's going to change for more, is kind of a wealthy person probably, someone who's got a lot of high skills. They're into new technology. And I would throw the last thing out there and say this. They are expecting the latest in technology when it comes to a charging station because they're the first to say, I am driving the latest in technology. So please don't roll out something that is lacking features to save costs, right? We can all go to, I'm not going to pick on Best Buy. You can all go to Best Buy and say, I want the latest in a smartphone, but if it's too expensive and you get something less expensive, you're getting a model that might not have the features that they're looking for. The EV is going to look at that and say, there's some other really cool features and benefits, and if you hold off on that, it's just going to be trouble. So I think cost of stations, trying to save some dollars here and there, just really think, what does that person want? And they want the latest in technology and the features that come with that, and they'll reward you with it by putting in something that they like to use and use on a regular basis.
This is Andrew. As both an EV driver and a condo liver, I can maybe speak to this pretty well. So at home, I do not have a charging station. I'm lucky enough that I drive a plug-in hybrid for that reason. My wife and I also share the car, so we don't have dedicated 100% access to either of our workplaces to leverage them to provide workplace charging at both locations, so it didn't matter who had the car. But just lowering the bar of expectation, honestly, sorry to contradict a little here, Eric, there is a benefit to just providing level 1 charger access wherever you go. It doesn't take a lot of power when your car is going to be plugged in for a full day and overnight on level 1 power. It can honestly solve a lot of range anxiety, and the rest can be picked up by public charging. So maybe just a little bit of just lowering the expectations of what it means to provide real workplace charging would be my advice for making this a really common benefit.
Oh, can I throw one thing out with that?
Sure.
Okay, sorry. The only thing I am going to say about that, I totally agree. I use a 110, use it regularly in my house. We are getting feedback from our station owner customers that they've had calls from general liability insurance companies asking them, what are they doing? Are they allowing people to plug into a 110, or are they using a charging station provided? And of course, they'll say, well, we have the Semuc Connect stations here, but we try to discourage the 110 plugger, people that plug into a 110. And we've had a couple of customers say, asking the liability insurance company, well, why are you asking this question? And they said, well, whose cable is that? That goes between the power source and the vehicle, right? Well, if it's on the station, that cord is technically your property. You own the station, you own the cable, there it is. If a driver shows up and they plug in, it's their cable. The question is, are you inspecting that cable on a daily basis for defects, cracks, maybe sitting in a puddle of water, trip hazard, things like that? Has the building been set up properly to say we'll accommodate for a lot of electric vehicles to plug in? Things like that. So we cannot say that the sky has fallen or is falling. But the general liability insurance companies we know are asking about this because it can be a liability. And there is a property in Kirkland one time where they allowed people to do it, and at 8 a.m. in the morning, the lights start flickering, and that's a bit of trouble. It all depends on each building. And I know a lot of EV owners like myself are tempted to try to plug in to a 110, but there's a lot to that. And so I agree. Hey, if it can be done and the property's cool with it, you run with it, right? Just know that the general liability insurance companies are starting to ask whether or not this might be a liability and consider raising the interest rates at that point. So yet to be determined.
Right. And on that same point, you need to make sure that the system is designed to handle it. You shouldn't just be plugging in a bunch of electric vehicles into 110 outlets that already happen to be there.
Yep.
There are electrical engineering concerns. So feel free to reach out to a electrical or an engineering company to consult on that.
Yes. Thank you so much to all of the speakers today. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Eric. And thank you, Anne, for an amazing presentation. And as you can see here, we have the contact information for our speakers today. If you had a question that didn't get answered, I know we ran out of time, feel free to reach out to our speakers. We will be sending out a recap email that will include the recording of this webinar and the presentations as well. So look forward to that shortly. And like I mentioned, if you have any additional questions, feel free to reach out and we'll get those questions answered as we see fit. And I hope you can join us on April 7th, where we'll be discussing everything you need to know on right-of-way charging for EVs. We'll be joined by Ford's Program Manager Aaron Gallagher, Michael Samuelson from the Office of Mayor Eric Garcetti in Los Angeles, Jennifer Venema from City of Sacramento, and Sarah Moore from the City of Berkeley to highlight current public charging pilots and programs that the challenges of providing public charging infrastructure and the vision of the future of public charging and EV adoption. So we do hope you're able to join us and expect the webinar presentation and the slides shortly from us. Thank you again for joining us today, and we hope to see you on April 7th. Thank you.